Hi, hello! A very short introduction before I turn you towards my desk view. So I've been thinking for a while to do an updated makeup collection video, and usually I try to like Speedy Gonzales through everything just so I can show you everything, and we don't really have much time to talk about anything in detail. So I've decided I'm going to approach this differently. This time we're going to make this a multi-parter, and I'm just going to go through my collection really slowly. We're going to take all the time in the world to swatch things, and it's just going to be one long party basically. So I'm going to switch you to my desk view now, and we're just going to go until basically I get tired, and then we're going to continue on another day. And I think I'm going to finish the makeup collection video with my brush collection. So let's start with the left drawer of my desk here, where I keep a bunch of single eyeshadows, eyeshadow stick type things, my powders, and some other random things. And like I said, we're just going to take our time, go slowly through it, probably do a bunch of swatching, so hopefully you're going to enjoy this. Let's start with a little compartment here that unfortunately you can't really see, so I'm just going to pull out the products to show them to you. So the little compartment all the way back here that you can't really see contains my gel liners. And you're probably wondering, Mariam, why do you have gel liners when we haven't really seen you wear eyeliner in like 2 years? And the short answer is I have given up on eyeliner. Well, I haven't really given up on it. I'm just not in a phase where I use a lot of eyeliner, but I think it's more practical for me to keep gel liners around instead of liquid eyeliners, because liquid eyeliners are definitely impractical for me right now. They're going to dry out and I'm going to have to toss them before I've even used like 20% of them. But when I have my gel liners, and I also have my very handy here Duraline from Inglot, I can revive my gel liners anytime I want because they've dried out by now, and some of these are ridiculously old. Let's start with the oldest ones that I have. I have the shades 77, which is the classic black shade, which as you can see I've also used quite a good amount of. This has some really good use on it. It is completely cracked and dried up because I have had this since 2000 and possibly 14. And this is the white color. This is the shade 76, which I keep around mostly because it is a good like mixing shade if you want to create like your own color, especially like a pastel color. And the nice thing about these eyeliners is they're dried out, but as soon as you apply a little bit of Duraline in there, they immediately come back to life. I continue to use the 77 liner anytime I feel like a black wing, just because I can't be bothered to buy a liquid liner and never use it. I do also have some funky colors left in here from Inglot. I have the shade 65, which is a beautiful burgundy red, which as you can see I've used a little bit, and it is actually a really flattering shade of eyeliner on my eye color, so that's why I keep it around. I really like how it looks on me. I also have the shade 63, which is a gorgeous pumpkin orange. I should really use these a bit more because they're just beautiful, beautiful colors. And the one that I always doubt whether I want to keep around is the shade 74, which is a beautiful lavender, like deeper lavender purple. So the shade 74, the purple one, is the only one that I would consider decluttering at this point because it's just not a shade that I'm super attracted to. Now, this one is also very old. This is from Zoeva, and it is in an absolutely gorgeous... This is more of like a metallic one. The other ones are more of like an opaque color. This has a little bit more of shimmer to it. And this is in the color After Hours, and it is a gorgeous dark teal. I love this eyeliner. I already showed you Duraline. If you're not familiar with this product, this is a mixing medium. You can use this to revive a variety of different makeup products. I've used it to revive gel liners. I've also used it to revive liquid eyeshadows. I've used it to revive even mascara, a tip that one of you actually gave me, especially with a mascara that not only needed reviving but was also smudging a little bit on me. One of you gave me the tip to put a few drops of this, then mix it in with the formula and try using it that way, and I have to say it dramatically decreased the amount of smudging I was getting from the mascara. And the coolest thing about this is you can mix it with your powder eyeshadows to basically create eyeliner from literally any eyeshadow in your collection. This has a really, really beautiful like texture to it and feel on the eye. It's very soft, doesn't irritate the eyes. This is my favorite mixing medium. It is so handy, it is really not that expensive. Inglot is a very like affordable type of brand, really solid brand. So if you are looking into a product like this, I highly recommend Duraline. You can also mix this with eyeshadows that are super sparkly if you want them to have more of that like wet, like liquid eyeshadow type of effect. Another part of my drawer that I think you can see just a little bit over here is these four, which are my pot eyeshadows. And I want to show them to you real quick, while also commenting on the fact that I've discovered, now that I've been using, you know, pot eyeshadows and liquid eyeshadows for the past year, I've discovered that pot eyeshadows just are not for me. I think there's something about making the effort to have to open the pot and then remove the little protector that really prevents me from getting more use out of my potted eyeshadows. I'm going to put this here for a little bit of protection. So unfortunately, I've discovered that potted eyeshadows just aren't for me. This is beautiful. This is the shade, the very popular shade Mink from Victoria Beckham Beauty. You can see this beautiful dark brown taupe shade with a variety of sparkles in it. It's a beautiful shade. This is a gorgeous like one and done, especially if you want like a nice taupey, cool tone smoky eye with a lot of dimension on it. This is a gorgeous eyeshadow. I really like it. You see this like whole thing where you have to put the thing back, and I just feel like they're so much more like finicky for me to use, whereas liquid eyeshadows are just so much easier. That's why I've been going for liquid eyeshadows much more than for my potted eyeshadows. Then we have a classic over here. This is from Hourglass, and this is in the shade, what is this called? This is the Scattered Light Glitter eyeshadow in the shade Smoke, which I purchased many years ago, influenced by Sam Ravendell. And I can see that I'm already making a mess here. That is wonderful. You can see this is another beautiful neutral shade, more like a light taupe with a bunch of sparkles in it. A really gorgeous topper type of eyeshadow. I have used this actually quite a bit, and I do enjoy using it still on occasion. But again, I just really don't think of these potted eyeshadows whenever I want to pull out for something a little bit more sparkly or like a one and done moment. I will much more think of my liquid eyeshadows. And then the two that probably fill me with the most shame and guilt because they're so gorgeous, and I use them probably once a year, mostly to not feel guilty about owning them. So these are the Auric pot eyeshadows in the shades Defiance and Ego. Defiance is the brown, like the bronzy brown. So these these are like dupes for, I want to say, Tom Ford eyeshadows that Tom Ford stopped making, and then Sam was like, okay, then I'm going to make my own version of these. So this is a gorgeous bronzy brown, and then you have this part of the eyeshadow, which is like a cream, and then on top of that, when you open it here, you have the little like sparkly topper moment. So this is the shade Defiance, and I'm just going to put a little bit of the topper over here so that you can see the effect. It's really, really pretty. They're really sparkly. I really like them. It's just that I never think to use them because I think they're just such a hassle. And the shade Ego is even more gorgeous because it is so unique. The actual cream eyeshadow is not super unique, and it's really impressive how creamy these have remained, and they have not dried out at all, considering that I've had them for almost, I want to say 3 years now. I think, no, 2.5 years, maybe 2.5 years. So the cream part of the eyeshadow is not super unique because it's just like your standard gunmetal gray. However, the topper on this eyeshadow is just gorgeous, light sage green gray. It is just so pretty, and there's something about the tone of this eyeshadow that makes my brown eyes really pop. I really should use these more. I'm just the worst. Why am I not using these? Look how pretty they are. Then we have something super random here. This is in eyeshadow from Notoriously Morbid, and many of you will not know this, but once upon a time I was a die-hard Notoriously Morbid person. I was even one of their mavens, so for a really long time I was like a bit of a promoter for the brand, let's put it that way. I had a very extensive Notoriously Morbid collection. I've decluttered most of it, not because I don't like Notoriously Morbid. I just stopped using single loose eyeshadows, and I grew out of that indie eyeshadow face completely, so I got rid of most of my indie eyeshadows. You're going to see I have still a few, but by far nothing like the collection that I had some years ago. But this is one of the few items that I have kept. This is the Snow Ghost highlighter. It was a limited edition thing from many years ago, and I'm very happy that it's still holding up, because actually a bunch of my pressed Notoriously Morbid eyeshadows completely came loose, like they went back to their loose form, because I think she just didn't have the ratios of binder and everything correctly, so a lot of them actually went back to being almost in a loose form. But this one has held up really well, and the reason I keep it around is because it makes for the absolute most beautiful, like iridescent or like glowy inner corner, like blue-green highlight. Look how pretty that is. Of course I'm going to keep it. I really love using it as an inner corner highlight with like a neutral look. Let's say something like any of these basically on the lid, blend it out, and then something like this in the inner corner. This is one of my favorite types of look to do. So maybe I should just do that. I should just use all of these together so that I get more use out of all of these products, because even this gorgeous green, I don't use it too often. Then I've got a really random palette here. I don't really keep my little palettes in this drawer. This is the only one that I keep here. This is the Victoria Beckham Smoky Eye Brick in the shade Signature. And I've talked about this before. I bought this eyeshadow palette. It is literally the most boring eyeshadow color story that you can ever imagine, especially for me, someone like me, to buy. But I absolutely love this little thing, because it is so handy to have when you just want to have something like neutral in your crease, and then a little bit of a dark brown as a liner moment, and then just pop whatever you want on the lid. It works beautifully, especially with like more neutral to cool toned looks, because a lot of other browns in my collection claim to be neutral, but they really aren't. This is gorgeous because it is neutral to slightly cool leaning. The only eyeshadow in here that I'm not super crazy about and I don't get much use out of is this stripe of like the peachy shade here, because it's just very light and I don't really have much use for it, if I'm being honest. But I tend to like mix these two together as like a little crease blending type of shade, and sometimes I will mix these two together. And yeah, the other thing I really enjoy using, you can just mix and match with these to create your own type of like brown shade. I really love this. The formula is stellar, as you would expect of Victoria Beckham, because it looks really flattering on the eyelids. They're really easy to blend out, and you can't beat Victoria Beckham's packaging. This is just absolutely gorgeous. This is luxury at its best. I love having this here, and because I like using it a lot with my single eyeshadows, I think this is the best place for it. So that, and also look at how tiny it is. I'm definitely going to forget it if I shove it with my other eyeshadow palettes, because even my other like Quads, Queens, you know, smaller type palettes are much bigger compared to this, and I'm sure that if I leave it together with those other palettes, I am going to forget about it. Okay, moving to this little compartment over here, which currently houses my liquid eyeshadow collection. 2 years ago, if you had asked me, I would have told you that I am 100% against liquid eyeshadows, because I had this experience with the Stila Glitter and Glow's gorgeous liquid glitter eyeshadows that dried out completely and were completely unusable to me after a few years. Now, in their defense, I just took too long to use them up and they dried out. It's really not the point of a liquid eyeshadow to have a very long life, but I was so burned by the experience, because they were also so expensive, that for a few years I just straight up refused to even think about owning liquid eyeshadows. And then, you know, Pat released some, Lisa Eldridge released some, and by the time that I was sort of like toying with the idea of getting liquid eyeshadows back into my collection to experiment with them, people already had reviews of these, as in how they perform and how they hold up. And I knew, especially from people who had owned the Lisa Eldridge eyeshadows, that even a year after they owned them, these eyeshadows had not dried out and they were still in absolutely perfect condition. So at that point in time, I decided to actually try Pat McGrath's liquid eyeshadows. I purchased 2 liquid eyeshadows that were on sale for 10 euros a piece. And just FYI, these are usually around, I want to say at least 27 euros a piece. So I bought them really cheap and they looked practically new, because I also bought them just several months after the release. So whoever was selling them clearly hadn't used them much either. So the shades that I bought are Platinum Bronze and Luna Rose, and gosh, the luck that I had, because these two still remain two of my absolute favorite liquid eyeshadows in my collection. These are gorgeous. Let me quickly swatch them for you. I've done like swatches of these so many times on my channel, but you know, we're having a bunch of like makeup fun here today, and swatching my makeup is like literally one of my favorite hobbies, so I am going to swatch a bunch of things for you. That's why we're going to do this series and take our time with it. I love these two eyeshadows. Now that I also have a bunch of other, well, not a bunch, I have two more colors from this collection, I still think these two are one of the standouts, because they're not just gorgeous colors, but they're also very, very sparkly. So I usually use these over top of other eyeshadows, and I particularly love using them together with my Guerlain or like my baked luxury eyeshadows, because they don't really add any additional texture to the lid, and they are also very, very shiny, especially when you sheer them out. I think one of the mistakes people make with this formula is that they apply too much, and then first of all they lose the sparkle, and second of all the eyeshadow just becomes very thick and very wet on the lids. I think the trick with these eyeshadows is to use less and just spread them out as much as possible, because then you're going to get the absolute maximum amount of shine. And I have to say, I have so many of these liquid eyeshadows now, including also from Lisa Eldridge, and I think these from Pat McGrath Labs and these two colors specifically are some of the shiniest ones that I own. Let me show you the other two colors that I purchased from Pat over the course of last year after I had obtained these. And these are the shades Smoldering Seduction and Cosmic Chartreuse. They're gorgeous shade, both of these. They're like the type of colors that I really, really enjoy. However, neither of them is as sparkly and as shiny as Luna Rose and Platinum Bronze. So these are more of like a shimmery type color, whereas Luna Rose and Platinum Bronze really are very glittery. This Smoldering Seduction shade is like chocolate. It's like the warm coppery chocolate type brown that I have a particularly soft spot for. And Cosmic Chartreuse is a chartreuse green, and I've got a soft spot for chartreuse greens as well. Let me give that a little bit of a better swatch as well. But look how beautiful. They're beautiful, beautiful shades. But I think swatched together with the other two, you can clearly tell how much less shiny these two are. They're gorgeous eyeshadows, but they're just not, they don't have that like glass effect. And I've managed to mount quite a collection of Lisa Eldridge liquid eyeshadows, and I'm not sure that I can swatch them next to these because I've been very generous with the swatches. But let's just keep going, especially with colors that might be similar. So one shade that I think I probably didn't need from Lisa Eldridge is this one. So this is Zora from Lisa Eldridge, which I think is somewhat similar to the shade Platinum Bronze from Pat McGrath Labs. It's not exactly the same shade, which is why I justify having both, but they are very, very close, and I do sort of use them for the same purpose. And you can see this one is also very shiny, but like the glitter particles in here are somewhat smaller compared to the glitter particles in the Pat McGrath eyeshadow. Okay, let's also swatch one of my favorites from the collection, and this is the shade Emily. Emily is a beautiful neutral taupe with multicolor glitter. I think this one is really sparkly, and this one is one of my favorites to use in the winter when I go for my light taupe type of looks. Like something like this from Victoria Beckham, my little signature quad with Emily on the lids is just stunning. Look at this shade. This shade is so pretty. I really, really like Emily. I think this one is one of my favorites from the Lisa Eldridge range. Again, you can see not quite the same amount of like shine and sparkle as the Pat McGrath eyeshadows. It's more close to maybe Smoldering. It's a little bit more sparkly than say these two, but it's still a different like size of glitters in the Lisa Eldridge eyeshadows. In terms of color and in terms of, you know, uniqueness, I think this is one of the shadows that I would recommend the most out of the Lisa Eldridge range. This is the shade Titania. Titania is like a dirty, bronzy, olivey color that is just absolutely stunning. I love the shade of this. It is also very sparkly, but just look at the shade of this. Look at this like smoky, you know, dirty olive old gold kind of color. Just gorgeous. I love this shadow so much. But I do love to pair this specific liquid eyeshadow with a single eyeshadow that I have from Pat, which is a part of one of her older kits. So this is a single eyeshadow from Pat McGrath Labs from back when she was releasing kits. Like, think back to the year 15, 16, when she first started releasing those little kits that had a bunch of different things in them. This eyeshadow, Ultra Suede Brown, is basically the perfect base for the shade Titania from Lisa Eldridge. So let me just swatch them next to each other so that you can see how perfectly they pair. Look at that. Imagine, actually you don't have to imagine it because I can demonstrate what happens when you put a little bit of Titania over top of Ultra Suede Brown from Pat McGrath Labs. Look how pretty that is. This is one of my favorite looks to wear in the summer when I have something like warm toned on and I just want like a nice little bronzy antique gold type of moment. Look how pretty that is. Then let's swatch Anais. Anais is another one that I think is really pretty and really unique. It's like a pewter sage type of green with multicolor glitter in it. And if I'm not mistaken, that's one of the more like glittery shades in the collection from Lisa Eldridge. Oh yeah, look at that. That is just gorgeous. This is a unique color and I just really love using it as a topper because it just adds so much dimensionality to your looks. And one that sort of joined the family recently a little bit on a whim because I was on Lisa Eldridge's website, I was shopping for something else and I just wanted to make my purchase count. So I thought, how about I snag another liquid eyeshadow? And I purchased this shade, the shade Angelica. And I can't tell you how much I have used this shade since, how much I enjoy it. And dare I say, it is probably up there together with Platinum Bronze and Luna Rose as one of my favorite liquid eyeshadows in my collection. There is something about the tone of this eyeshadow that I just find so elegant and sophisticated for a pink eyeshadow. Look how pretty that is. It has just a little bit of warmth to the tone and it's not super sparkly. See, by comparison, Anais is much sparklier. It's much more close to Luna Rose and Platinum Rose in terms of like the amount of shine and glitter. This is much more subtle, but there is something about the tone of this pink which I think is just so beautiful and so elegant. And I think it is only logical that we continue with this portion of my drawer here, because then I can show you how I love to pair Angelica. And the way I love to pair Angelica is with one of my new Dior single eyeshadows. Let me try to pull it out. Yes, I immediately pulled out for the correct one. So I love these single eyeshadows from Dior. I think they're so pretty. There's something so satisfying about touching these eyeshadows because the texture is just amazing. I don't know that I can really properly describe it to you. You have to dip your finger into one of these. They feel like a cream and they're so soft and so beautiful, and oh, and they're also very, very shiny. So this shade is another one that has really like crawled under my skin and has made a nest there. This is the shade Rose Tulle, and this is a shade that I really like to use together with that liquid eyeshadow Angelica from Lisa Eldridge, because can you see what a beautiful pairing they make? They're not exactly the same shade, but when you put them together they create this dynamics and dimensionality that just looks gorgeous and so sophisticated on the lids. I really love them. I like Rose Tulle on its own, but I particularly like it paired together with Angelica. And what started my whole love affair with single Dior eyeshadows is this one. This is the classic that everyone raves about. This is the shade Beige Mita, which is one of the most beautiful neutral, slightly taupey leaning browns. This is more of a neutral brown. I wouldn't call it really like a very cool toned smoky brown. It is mostly neutral, but it just has beautiful shine, beautiful texture. It blends out so gorgeously on your eyelids, and it is just, again, another like grown-up classy shade. I don't really know how else to describe it. I really love Beige Mita, and I think you can appreciate how much I have loved it because the Dior logo has almost worn off. I also have one of the satin shades from this formula, from this single eyeshadow formula from Dior. This is the shade Lucky Clover. Lucky Clover is not shiny like the other two shades are. It is more of like a matte with a tiny bit of shimmer in it, but it is a gorgeous deep forest green. that I like to use as a little like smoky moment or as a liner on my upper lashes. This is a pretty shade, maybe a little bit unnecessary for my collection to really have like a single green eyeshadow, but you know how much I love green, you know how much I love like these foresty type greens, and I just could not resist. And the final inhabitant of that part of my drawer is another single eyeshadow that has been released recently. This is one of the new Ombre Essentiel eyeshadows from Chanel, and this is another one that I am absolutely obsessed with. Not just with the texture of the eyeshadow and the luscious, luxurious formula that it has, but also this color. This is the shade Quartz Fumé, and Quartz Fumé is one of those colors that I find incredibly difficult to describe because it is basically a chameleon. It is a green, it is a brown, it is a bronze, and I don't think that swatched out you can really appreciate what a gorgeous shade it is. You have to put it on your eyelids to really be able to appreciate what a beautiful, dynamic color this is. This is one of those shades that on a swatch doesn't really look it looks very unassuming. It's not very sparkly, it's not very shimmery, it's not very glittery, and the color is very difficult to appreciate, especially when you put it next to shiny shades like Rose Tulle or Beige Mica. This just looks very unassuming, but trust me, when you put this on your lids, it comes to life. It is so pretty. Let's take a look at what's going on in this part of my drawer. You will have to excuse me, this is looking a little bit dirty. I think I might actually take everything out and clean it up after I'm done filming this, because I did that recently with my other drawer, but I was a bit too lazy to clean this one out, and I think I will have to do that because this part of the drawer especially is looking very, very messy. So I have this little insert here from IKEA, which, you know, has to be cleaned every now and then. But anyway, let's go through the contents of this drawer. You already saw Ultra Suede Brown, so we're not going to re-swatch that. The rest of the inhabitants of this drawer are primarily really from Pat McGrath Labs. So I have a couple is an understatement. I have a bunch of the single eyeshadows, the Idols that she released a couple of years ago. Those have been discontinued and long gone. I have a couple of those eyeshadows that were part of the same kit that Ultra Suede Brown came from. Another part of this kit is also in this drawer. It is this crayon, like this black crayon. But I primarily bought this kit because of these three eyeshadows here, which are in Pat's Baked formula. And if you have been around my channel for any amount of time, you will know that Pat's Baked eyeshadow formula is my favorite eyeshadow formula of all time, and I will continue chasing it until the end of days, basically. And that is also the reason why I own these two Bobbi Brown eyeshadows here. You will see in a little bit, they are basically the same formula as the Pat McGrath Labs Baked eyeshadows. We also have two very random eyeshadows in here. This is loose eyeshadow from Inglot. This is in the shade, this is one of their body sparkles, technically. These are called the body sparkles. This is in the shade 54. And you have no idea how many times I've considered decluttering this because these are messy. They're so pretty, but they're so messy. But look at this color. Look at this shift. Look how gorgeous that is. And I will like very occasionally pull for this to use as a topper moment. Let me quickly swatch that for you because I don't want to open it again to repeat the mess one more time. It is really because of the color of this eyeshadow that I have kept it, because these types of shifts, like the gold coppery shifts, are my favorite. Look how beautiful that is. That is just gorgeous. I need to use this more. And the second random dweller of this drawer is one of the Moon Dusts from Urban Decay. This is the shade Zodiac. I used to have a bunch of these. I still have the palette because these to me are the original Blitz Astro shades. They're not baked, but they are so incredibly beautiful and so sparkly. And I've been having a hard time getting rid of this one because I recently thought that it would make an absolutely beautiful pairing together with that Lucky Clover shade from Dior. From Dior. So the satin green that I just showed you, this one, together with this, would make an absolutely beautiful like green smoky eye moment. And I'm basically keeping this eyeshadow around to try this look out and see how I feel about this eyeshadow, because I've decluttered a bunch of them and it was really hard for me to declutter them because I loved them so very much. But I just noticed after a few years that I was never using them because I would always choose for my Pat eyeshadows over the Moon Dusts. But this one has been difficult to, you know, say goodbye to. So let's swatch a bunch of Pat McGrath labs, shall we? As if we don't swatch Pat McGrath labs enough on this channel. Or maybe before we swatch the Pat McGrath labs, let's quickly talk about the two Bobbi Brown shadows. So I did a video last year after I visited the makeup, what is it called? Makeup something store. I don't know. It's like a discount store for makeup that they have even in the US, like in a variety of different countries. And they were selling these baked Bobbi Brown shades on sale, because one of these in Europe costs 50 euros a pop and they were selling them for 30 euros a pop, which is still ridiculous for a single eyeshadow. But when I was in the store and I started swatching these, I realized that these are essentially the only true dupe of a Pat McGrath Blitz Astro shade that you're ever going to come across. You can chop off my left arm if these are not made in the same lab that the Blitz Astro shades from Pat McGrath labs are made. I am willing to bet that they come from the same place. So these are also made in Italy, and if you feel them, you see them, you touch them, you swatch them, they're essentially the same. You know that there is a variety of different like textures with the Blitz Astro shade. So for example, this shade in particular, this is the shade Heat Ray, is what I would describe as a dupe for the Pat McGrath VR type of formula. So it's more of like a smoother type formula that is loaded with glitter. This is gorgeous. And then this eyeshadow was a limited edition last year. And this eyeshadow is really special for me because, first of all, it is a color that I have wanted Pat McGrath to make for a very, very long time. This beautiful, ethereal, minty green. But also, it is a present from one of you. These never came to the Netherlands, unfortunately, so I would never have been able to buy this if it wasn't for one of you who said that you had received an extra of this and the Moonstone Glow palette, and you very, very generously shared that with me. So that is the only reason I own this eyeshadow. I cherish it and I actually use it a lot. You can see by how worn off the grid pattern of the eyeshadow is how much I have used and loved this. Because it is just ethereal. Look how pretty that is. This has an inner corner highlight. Look at that. And this eyeshadow I would also describe as the VR formula from Pat McGrath Labs. So speaking of Pat McGrath Labs, let's take a look at these three eyeshadows, which, like I mentioned, were part of a kit. So first and foremost, a familiar face. This is Astral White. Astral White eventually was introduced into the Mothership One Subliminal palette. This is one of her astral textures. You can see this gorgeous baked goodness with iridescent blue-purple sparkle. So the Astro shades from Pat McGrath Labs, as you will guys know, are somewhat chunkier and they're very sparkly. And this eyeshadow is no exception. You know, if you have Subliminal, you know how magical Astral White is. I am not mad at all to have Astral White as a single that I can travel with and also within the context of my Subliminal palette. And then we have these two treasures here, which I cherish as well. So this is the shade Dark Matter. It is a baked black eyeshadow with what appears to be very finely milled gold shimmer. It is so special and just such a satisfying experience to use on your eyelids because it is gorgeous. I use it mostly as a liner. I don't really use it as a smoky eye because, you know, a black smoky eye is just too heavy for the everyday. But it has a beautiful texture and I just absolutely love to use it as a liner or to darken the outer corners, you know, any purpose that you can think of for a black eyeshadow. And then we have this treasure. This is the shade Mercury. Mercury is indescribably gorgeous. Touching it, looking at the shade, applying it on your eyelids, just every bit of the experience of applying this eyeshadow is divine because it is, again, one of those colors that I don't really know how to describe to you. It is a chameleon, it is a silver, it is a green, it is a bronzy gold. It is so pretty and the texture of it is just absolutely stunning. It has a very finely milled shimmer to it, so it is not sparkly as in like glittery like Astral White, but it is also not like a satin eyeshadow. It has a decent amount of sparkle to it, which I'm hoping that you can see here in the tiny bit of sunlight that I have. And then I have 8 of Pat's Idols. Some of these I also have in palettes. Actually, most of them I also have in palettes, so I'm being absolutely ridiculous and extra for keeping them. But to be honest with you, I do actually use both the singles and the eyeshadows in the palettes, so I feel pretty confident that I'm going to keep all of them for the time being. But I can travel with the singles, whereas I never really travel with Mothership palettes. So let's go through them. I'm going to swatch them in a second, but I'm just going to quickly show you the shadows. So this is my beloved Statuesque. We've talked about Statuesque so many times. It is a beautiful matte contour type shade. based on the huge pan in there, you can see how loved this eyeshadow is. Then we have this gorgeous eyeshadow that is called Synthetica, which sadly has never returned in the context of a palette, which is a shame because it is a beautiful, like smoky purple. I'm going to swatch this in a second for you. This is a beautiful, unique eyeshadow, and it's really a shame that Pat hasn't introduced it into a palette. Then we have Pale Fire, and you can see based on the pan of Pale Fire how much I have used this eyeshadow. I love to travel with it. It's one of my favorite like summery eyeshadows to use because it has a duochrome to it and it looks beautiful as a one and done shade. And it is also present in Pat's La Vie and Rose 6 pan. Then we have Lapis Luxury, which is one of the most luxurious turquoise blue shade, also present in the Decadence palette. Then we have the shade Rose Venus, which was actually introduced into the Celestial Odyssey palette some years after the release of the Idols. This is a beautiful rosy neutral shade, another one that makes for a beautiful one and done. Then we have Corrupt Copper. Corrupt Copper is a magical tangerine gold shade. Then we have Divine Mink. Divine Mink is also present in the Decadence palette, but as you can see I also use the single a lot. This is another one of those like unique, difficult to describe eyeshadows. It is so pretty. It is a dark like taupey brown over a navy blue base. And finally we have an eyeshadow that is present in a palette that I actually don't have. This is present in the, I don't remember the name, it's one of the original 3/6 pans that she released that was a companion to the Subliminal palette, and this is the shade Telepathic Taupe, which is gorgeous. It is again one of those like difficult to describe eyeshadows because it is a brown that has a little bit of like a bronzy green hue to it. Let me swatch all of them for you now. These are completely insane when you compare them to the single eyeshadows from Dior and Chanel. They're just a completely different type of experience. But let's recap. Statuesque, Synthetica, Pale Fire, Lapis Luxury, Rose Venus, Corrupt Copper, Divine Mink, and Telepathic Taupe. I mean, there's really nothing to say about these eyeshadows. The swatches kind of speak for themselves, and I think most of you are familiar with these eyeshadows because you own them as well. The two eyeshadows that have never been re-promoted in a palette out of the Idols that I own are Statuesque and Synthetica, so these two. It's a shame because look at the shade of Synthetica, isn't that gorgeous? Wouldn't that have been a beautiful eyeshadow to put in a palette? Unfortunately, never made a comeback. And this part of the drawer contains my Kiko long-lasting eyeshadow sticks, with the exception of this one from Pat McGrath Labs. This is the only one that is not from the brand of Kiko. I'm not going to swatch all of them for you because a bunch of them are also either limited edition or discontinued shades, but I am going to mention that these are some of the most beautiful like shadow stick type formula that blend out, last on your eyelids, and also in your waterline. Let me swatch a few of my favorites. So this is the shade 10. One of the shades that is unfortunately discontinued, a gorgeous deep forest green. Another one that I use a lot, and I almost don't want to swatch for you, is this one. This is the most beautiful copper brown. I love using this in my waterline because it just makes my brown eyes pop. And what else can I swatch for you? What else can I swatch for you? Oh yeah, these two were part of a limited edition collection for the summer, and these I use not very often because they are the frozen stick eyeshadows. So these are not their long-lasting formula. They're called the frozen stick eyeshadows, and they are super funky because when you put them on your lids or in your waterline, they do actually feel cold. Like you feel the effect. I don't really know how to describe them. They're super funky. I like them, but they're just such a weird sensation when you put them on your lids and your waterline that I don't tend to use them a lot. This is another one of my favorites. This is the shade 31, which is I think my favorite type of blue, a cornflower blue with a bit of like a coppery duochrome to it. This shade is stunning. I want Pat McGrath Labs to come out with a VR formula of this color with a copper sheen, like a copper duochrome glitter to it. And then I can die happy. And I need it to be in this specific tone of blue. Not a royal blue, Not a seafoam blue, not a turquoise blue. No, it needs to be a cornflower blue, and I'm very particular about the copper duochrome. Not a gold, not a bronze, not anything else. I need it to be copper. All right, and the very last little container that is in this drawer contains my like finishing setting powders. I will show you first the one that I haven't even opened yet. This was a sample of a by Terry hyaluronic hydro powder that I haven't even opened yet because it came as a free gift with purchase at some point in time. I am not in my loose powder phase, so I thought it's a waste to open this powder at the moment. So I haven't even tried this. I have no idea how it works. Then I have the original Pat McGrath Labs Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Setting Powder in the shade Light. Again, I'm currently not in a phase in my life where I enjoy loose setting powder, so unfortunately I don't really use this powder. I really need to find a way to use this because it's getting really old, and I know it's a powder, it's probably fine, but I just want to get more use out of it and move it out of my collection. Then the powder that is currently in the heaviest rotation in my collection and my absolute favorite powder at the moment, the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish. It might very well be that when I pan this powder I am going to repurchase it because it does everything that I want a powder to do. It sets my makeup, it blurs my pores, and it makes my makeup last really long. But I will first try actually to see whether the Gucci setting powder can sort of substitute the Charlotte Tilbury one. This Gucci powder in the shade 000 Matte Natural, which is more of like a white color. So unfortunately it doesn't have quite the same tone as my skin, but it's still fine to use because it's very finely milled and it more or less works like a setting powder that is like a translucent color. I'm not quite sure that it really extends the wear time of my makeup the way that the Charlotte Tilbury powder does, but I am going to try it that way because I would like to get more use out of this powder. It was very expensive and I absolutely love the packaging. If there was a way for me to remove the pan from the Charlotte Tilbury one, or to just get the pan of the Charlotte Tilbury one and shove it in here, I would. Oh yeah, I can remove this one very easily. I can just pin it out. So both the powders as well as the bronzers from Gucci, I think only their blushes you cannot buy refills for. But their powders and their bronzers you can buy refills for, like even here in the Netherlands I've seen the refills in online stores. So actually if there was a way for me to pry this one out and put it in here, that would be the best of both worlds. Does anyone know if Charlotte Tilbury sells refills? Is that a thing? If she does, I'm so going to do that. And finally, we have a powder that is in here, but I haven't actually opened it. And this is a powder that I've had before and I adore. This is the shade Dim Light from the Ambient Lighting Powder range of Hourglass. As you can see, this is brand new. I haven't even like touched it because this is more like my natural, you know, not mattifying, more like a natural glowing type of powder. And for whatever reason, I think I'm like so focused on finishing the Charlotte Tilbury one that I haven't really used anything else for a while. But this is one of my favorite powders and I really missed it in my collection. I had it, I panned it, and then I didn't really have it for like a year or two and I started to miss it. So that's why I repurchased it. But I'm going to use this one shortly. You guys, this is basically all. These are all the inhabitants of this drawer. We've gone through everything, we've swatched a bunch, and I think I'm really tired now, so I'm going to call this first part quits, and we're going to continue with the drawer that is next to me right here on my right side. And you know, we're just going to slowly go through everything and just enjoy swatching things. Hopefully you are enjoying this, and do let me know in the comments if this is a format of like a makeup collection video that you're enjoying, or do you think I'm taking too long? Please let me know. See you in part 2. Bye!